welcome back to my channel for those of you who are returning, and thank you for those of you who are just tuning in for your first video. If you are, I would advise you to go back to the previous videos where we first started this book, which is the Ascending Goddess. And as I stated in the last video, I am going to just do like the chapters straight through. I'll still announce like the titles of each section because it is still in sections, but I think it's just better to do it just straight through a whole chapter because they're not really that long, but I think it'll be better for y'all. And plus, I've been in talks with my accountability partner and they said it's better too. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. We have chapter 2 starting today. So we're gonna start with that first section, which is the origin of the Lotus. The story of the conception sacrament of the fiery lotus goes back deep into invisible spheres. Only the light of reflected truth can reach our hearts. From where did the first flower appear, which unfolded from the bud born of a mysterious seed? Who created this tiny seed after embedding its form, color, and fragrance therein? Only fiery thinking could reproduce such beauty, sanctifying it with the breath of the one spirit. But the flower's ability to reproduce itself is inherent in the mature seed right from birth. Indeed, here can be traced the hand of woman, who has endowed all living beings with the ability to generate new life. The first shoot appears on the smooth surface of the waters, offering a proclamation of the bud ripening at its hidden depths. The mystery of life unfolds in secret, and it is impossible to discern the processes occurring behind the petals, tightly fused into a single whole. Fire and water create their own child, which soon will be revealed to the world in all its beauty. And now the day has arrived when the marvelous divine bud solemnly cleaves the surface of waters closed in above it, and proudly rises crowned on all sides with large leaves. That which has been maturing in secret now clearly appears before the gaze of the celestial orbs of the universe. The triumph of life glistens in glory. Above the quiet forest, which had never known the tumult of waves, a warm breath of the first fiery impulse glistened. It was a cluster of fire starting to speak, ready to become an orb of the world, which was in the process of creation. The bud gave a start, and the first petal, which was holding up the uncovering of all the rest, straightened up with ease, at the behest of some kind of inner force. A magical effulgence of fires then poured forth into the world, flowing like light-bearing streams from the tips of resplendent petals. Yet the core was still concealed by the last petal. It was waiting for the hour of awakening, and something was taking place beneath it, apparently preparing to reveal its supreme ripeness at that moment when the essence of its phenomenon was exposed and brought forth openly to the calm surface of the waters. At the core of the wondrous bud, a living being was ripening. It was supposed to traverse the path from flower to God. Woman was destined to take over the path of man without losing the great femininity bestowed by the Divine Mother. After imbibing an equal share of currents from the fire and water, she had to carry the full chalice, unspilled, and, moreover, to multiply both principles when it was impossible to retrieve the memory of them. For a being who was still hidden under the petal, covering the core of the bud, it was predetermined to forever remain a woman endowed with the power of man's spirit. Long aeons passed, and fiery Lotus, after tempering the incandescence of its flame, came to resemble its ordinarily earthly counterpart. The latter may still be seen today, though its size back then was significantly larger, and its structure concealed a state of rarefied matter. The sun, which had established himself at the zenith of fiery glory, announced through the breath of his rays that the hour had arrived for the opening of the last petal. Waters were melted from the incandescence of pouring fires, and the flower was descending lower and lower, smoothly holding out upon the surface. These were no longer the boundless expanses of the stellar ocean, where it was conceived and born. These were now the waters of the earth. The infinite fire-breathing world had disappeared from its field of vision, and the lotus appeared on the mirror-like surface, whose depths reflected the highest mountains surrounding it on all sides. This was a new home for the flower. The hour had struck, the cosmic period dictated the supreme will, and the roots of the flower immersed themselves deep in earthly soil. And during the moments when a balance was being established, when the juices of the earth had permeated its very core, a great impulse was given. Through the power of eternal currents, the little petal suddenly straightened out, revealing a fanciful silhouette, bowed in eternal prayer. A silhouette of the heavenly woman who had descended into the earthly realm. She was subtle and translucent, like a gentle petal of a lotus. Straightened to her full height, she appeared surrounded by a halo of glory, which consisted of little snow white leaves fastened by a single diadem. She stood firmly, just like the lotus itself, whose tight stem maintained a balance between the roots and the luxuriant crown at its top. The woman took a decisive step forward, and in an instant, the petals of the lotus closed and submerged in the depths of the waters. In anticipation of the hour when she who had left from the world will return. In anticipation of the hour when she who had left them would return. They would not rot nor lose their freshness, even if they had to wait millions of years. One day, the hour would strike, and they would accept the precious gem, to elevate her once more to the feet of the Creator in the fire-breathing spheres. The woman emerged from the waters and stepped into the world. She trod upon the land as easily as upon the smooth surface of the waters. She could walk through the rocks, and it was not difficult for her to appear in an instant on the highest mountaintop. For her who matured in the lotus, there were no insurmountable obstacles. She was omnipotent, and there is nothing surprising her, for she bore within her fiery heart the spirit of ethereal man. Yet, once imbued with earthly currents, her weightless, resplendent form began to gradually lose its heavenly properties, and the radiant goddess of the morning was darkened by a shadow which barely covered her. So her body became densified, over time restricting the unbounded soaring of her free spirit. The ethereal woman was becoming an earthly one. She had not taken root so deeply in the solid soil. She had taken root so deeply in the solid soil that eventually she even lost her memories of the blazing fiery lotus, which had delivered her into this world. But the flower was waiting for her knowledge that one day she would remember it and would dedicate a whole story to it before she returned, with the precious gift in her hands. And the petals will open, laying their gentle core at the feet of the ordinarily earthly woman, preserving the great devotion to her fiery heart that elevated the name of ethereal woman higher than the highest known before. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to be back with the next part of chapter 2. All right, so we're back with chapter 2, section 2. Enchanted by the world of forms, the woman woke up, in a shape woven from the currents of the earth. Here, everything was different. She found herself, this is called the Song of the Morning. She found herself in a world that was made up of stones. The absence of thought imposed its imprint upon the dense rock, which was pure and immaculate. The stone itself could not think, let alone impress upon itself something higher as the fruit of someone else's imagination. Naturally, where there is no thought, there were no words born. The great silence had become the eternal companion of the lone woman. For a long time, the one who had emerged from the lotus walked upon the earth. Yet in her movements, she could not be considered to be taking measured steps, for the woman was still so weightless that her feet barely touched the earthly crust. Appearing as a subtle vision, she reached out to various stones, which began to revive from the touch of her marvelous hands. They in turn started to reach out to her as though she were a magnet, attempting to detach their ponderous structure from the earth, and through her gain the lightness of soaring. The call for transfiguration has sounded throughout the world. The coldness of immobility began to respond to the warmth flowing across the spheres of the earth like a rapid stream. So great was the heart of the woman that it succeeded in shifting frozen processes away from a dead point. The life-affirming note had resounded across the globe. The light of the sun glinted, unfolding his first rays, and the great day began, which had to pass under the symbol of woman and last for billions of years. It was destined for her to carry out the utmost labor and, like the Creator, produce ever new organisms suitable for bearing within themselves the triumph of life. What is woman? First, she is the bestower of life. Second, she is the matter which reproduces itself. Third, she is the creative force that incarnates the invisible into a visible form. This sequence of enumeration may be continued, for the field of activity allotted by the one Creator to his earthly reflection. Sorry about that. Woman is infinitely great. The morning of the new day was the second in succession, and it served as the sign of the unfolding lotus. In this form were united the masculine and feminine principles. This is why her descent into the world took place from the celestial flower that came down to the earth. It was here that the fiery matter itself stepped out of the waters upon the land. All 7 notes of the great octave were to resound across the world, indicating the birth of 7 colors. The 7 rays reviving the 7 races of highly organized living things. And the woman was destined to give birth to all this. Since it was necessary to do an enormous amount of preparatory work, she set to it with the first rays of the morning orb without losing time. A long, limitless path is spread out before the woman. How hard it is to go it alone, without feeling the strong shoulder of man nearby. Like the lotus, she has absorbed 2 principles, yet she has the right to manifest only one, concealing the other deep in her heart, for it is there that the fire is predetermined to stay until the destined hour. Who will help woman and balance her out at a time when the pans of the scales are weighed in favor of the material world? Who will set forth the spiritual values carrying divine fires to establish the world's great equilibrium? But one cannot grumble over the fact that woman was destined to bear the cross of loneliness during 4 out of the 7 rounds. The quaternary of fundamental notes must resound throughout the world before the supreme triad descends in the image of heavenly man. The quadrangle spread out upon the earth will be covered with the pyramid of Holy Spirit. Woman prepares the path for man, and, in realizing this, she is silently performing a heroic deed of life. Will the heart of man respond to a deep groan emitted by the silent lips of woman's wounded heart? Will he leave the call of the suffering soul without a response? Is it easy for him to last through billions of years in anticipation of the instant when the time comes for the destined meeting? It is impossible for man, just as for woman, to find happiness when they leave along different orbits intended for the 2 separated halves. And, while more and more distancing from each other, they almost lose sight of their portion. And along with the disappearance of this half from one's field of vision, hope may fade away too. But a round is a round, and the merging of the 2 orbits still must occur at a single point. and the heart of man already knows that the two cycles will appear next to each other, for such is the law of evolution. Yet, this will happen only when woman enters the fourth round, which has direct contact with the fifth, and this is where the realms of the spirit begin. Such is the will of the fire, to stand waiting in the place predetermined for the meeting. And woman must reach it on her own, with her human hands and feet, bringing the appointed hour ever nearer. Not sad but joyful is the song of the morning. It will be a wonderful day, warm and sunny. Woman will compose a marvelous pattern and will immortalize her thought, imbued with heartfelt fire and stone, imposing a thought form upon it as upon a scroll. Stones may be destroyed by sounds, or rather, they may open themselves up to a note dominant in nature. And while crumbling into fibers, they may reveal these fibers as taut strings on which matter can play and emit other sounds. However, this will no longer be the voice of stone, but rather the rustle of grass and the breath of future oak forests. After all, the world is not a stone. It is diverse and has many faces. One need only unseal its potential. All the hues will unfold, and the 7 colors of the rainbow will open as resplendent petals, once the sun rises higher, advancing towards his zenith. The day will be beautiful, and the triumph of life will never be interrupted as long as at least one woman beloved by the fire-breathing heart of man exists in the world. All right, so again, we're going to take a break, and we will be back. All right, Chapter 2, Part 3, the Zenith of Fire. Woman was the first to descend into the world, where there was still no man. She bore him within herself in the form of the fire of her own spirit. He abode in her heart, and while his shape was inaccessible to the eye, he followed the woman, invisibly accompanying her on her distant journey. Their meeting was yet to come in the form planned by the Almighty Creator. Invisible bonds sacredly secured the union, wherein both man and woman held their marital duties above anything else. And even while separated for billions of years, they were to devoutly preserve faithfulness to each other. The woman did not sleep. She still did not know what a dream was. For her, all worlds were accessible, and she continued to live therein, simultaneously doing great deeds in all 7 of her bodies. However, the brightness of colors gradually began to fade, and in the process of densifying, the world more intensively affected the woman's structure, little by little depriving her of the possibility of perceiving the subtle plane. The main thing was not to turn into stone. Otherwise, she could lose the only treasure that warmed her heart. Her thought about man is the care which she must incessantly take for the sacred fire. First and foremost, she had to pay attention to the heart. She needed to manifest fires to such a degree of radiance so that they would literally crystallize in her breast. And even if woman were destined to turn into stone, then light-bearing sparks should be able to resurrect the flame of her former life within her, impelling her to an eternal search for the only man. What can multiply the warmth of fires but sacred love? She loved no matter what. If a woman does not love, she is not a woman. She is nothing but a stone. Apparently, this was not enough, and it was necessary to add the flame of earthly love to the might of heavenly love. You should see your beloved in every living entity, imbuing your heart with life-bearing currents. How can you embrace the whole world with your love, O woman, and, after turning it upside down, see that there is no point in looking for your beloved man here? The earth was poor, and heaven alone was able to share any kind of riches with her. Realizing this, the woman directed her gaze heavenward, appealing to the highest fires to descend upon the lowest soil. She wanted to imbue terra firma, just like her own body, with every kind of flame, so that the memory of the fire would be preserved in every little cell of the planetary body. After all, where the trace of flame is revealed, there the seal of the Holy Spirit is seen. And what is the Spirit but the fire? And what is the flame but man? Indeed, for the sake of the descent of her only one, woman will apply every effort, sowing sparks of light everywhere, so that her beloved will always be able to find her trace. She will raise tongues of flame, adorning its tiny sparklets with light. And all this in order for the more powerful fire to come down in the image of divine man. Guided by the fires of her heart, she labors for his glory, preparing the world with the aim of transferring it to the possession of his fire-breathing spirit. Let the here be like there, at an unattainable height. What part with the highest? Why part with the highest? The two should always be everywhere and inseparable, both in heaven and on the poor earth. The incandescence of passions had reached its apogee. Everything was raging in the breast. Harmony and peace were disturbed by an invasion of earthly feelings. They came into conflict with the sounding of the heavenly soul, giving rise to dissonance. For the first time, the pain had penetrated the heart. Anguish flooded the woman, and her eyes began to moisten day by day. She allowed anxiety to enter her breast, anxiety that took the place intended for joy. The future vaguely penetrated her consciousness, which was now enveloped in a haze generated from the condensation of matter. Perishable tissue was conquering new positions as it boldly moved forward. The fire alone represented a serious obstacle. Even the woman's earthly essence began to sacredly honor the inviolable of the borders of her inner heavenly realm. The warmth of the flame was concentrated to such an extent that it invisibly settled in the form of a fiery crystal within the depths of her heart. This was the fruit yielded by the flame that had reached the apogee of its own condensation. That is, it represented a point which could be called a fiery zenith. Oh, how beautiful you have become, O woman, notwithstanding the growing heaviness of your earthly form, and the fact that the matter which wove you has cast a whole network of wrinkles upon your forehead. The beauty of great femininity has crystallized within you. You are Sophia, for you are the incarnation of divine wisdom. You are Lakshmi, for you bear within your heart the fire of God, Vishnu. You are Saraswati, for you are the embodiment of the waters of the Great Mother. You are heavenly Isis, who gave life to the earthly Isis. You are the very cradle that nurtured humanity. O woman of the earth, the woman of the universe, the woman beloved by the heart of the infinity of fiery worlds. You who have ascended as the goddess of the morning, while moving upon earthly waters, have reached the apogee of stellar glory, revealing the zenith of fire in the hearts that have followed in the wake of the lotus-footed one. You are destined to initiate the era of love, for you are the first who waited for the only one, and who have passed through the fiery betrothal, rising with your earthly feet into the temple, blazing with flames and spheres beyond the limits of our world, where the spirit of the one and only breathes fire. You have found man, preparing for him a marriage bed within human hearts. They will love just as magnificently and beautifully as you do, and they will traverse the greatest path, from a tiny grain of sand to a star, becoming radiant at the zenith of the fiery glory of eternity. All the countless worlds bow to you, accept the veil woven by myriads of celestial orbs, and reveal yourself as the son of the new day. For, After shaking off the last drops of cosmic waters from your garment, you will become the personification of the incarnate fire, merging into the one star with the man you love. All right, so that is the end of chapter 2. As always, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Press the bell and make sure it has all, so you can get all the notifications of when I upload. And until next time, I love you.